Hello and welcome to another vlog. It is the end of May, which in fact it's the start of June. So that means it's time for another beer and another 45 minutes, hour or so of drinking and talking about nothing in particular. But the drinking is very much in particular. This week, or this month I should say, I have Chocolate Marble, which is actually a Manchester beer. I think they brew it somewhere near Stockport. It is Chocolate Marble, coffee, licorice, marble bottled beer produced to gratifying standards, 5.5% volume. Chocolate Marble brewed by Marble Brewery, Manchester, England. Store upright, cool but not chilled. Pour slowly to leave any sediment in the bottle. Contains wheaten barley. It's Vegetarian Society approved. 500 millilitres. You can actually tell, this is the most expensive Mancunian beer that I have ever drunk. I can tell you that much. It cost me £4.80. But despite being based in Manchester, their beers are actually quite rare. I think they're probably amongst the most fashionable of Manchester's breweries, so their stuff gets snapped up pretty quick. And they don't seem to make much of it. So this is the first marble beer I've tried, and well, we'll see how it goes. I do like a stout. And the sounds of coffee and licorice, yeah, might be alright. Oh, I'd say it's already too late. I've started recording after midnight again. But it takes me a little while to get my head in order and to tidy up the vlogatorium. Well, it wasn't that dirty, but I'll give it a good clean once a month. So, yeah, smells like a stout. Typical stouty nose. Can you tell? I'm a fraud, I don't know how to taste beer at all. I just know how to drink beer. Yeah, solid stout, nice and strong. Definitely you've got all those sort of roasted flavours, that Maillard reaction. Coffee, oh, definitely. Oh, and chocolate. The aftertaste actually quite interesting. Yeah, no, I like this one. I don't think it's rated particularly well on Rate Beer. Not that, my level of enjoyment does not necessarily correspond to reviews. Sometimes I enjoy a poorly rated beer quite a lot. Maybe this is one of those. Let's have a look on Rate Beer. Chocolate Marble. It gives a score on percentile, both overall and for its class. I quite like this site. Let's have a look. Results from ratebeer.com. Chocolate Marble. Chocolate Marble on Rate Beer. Overall, 83rd percentile, which is good, but, well, I'm not sure if it's £4.80 good. And for its style, which is porter, apparently, 79th percentile. So it's, not bad. It is actually quite tasty, I will give it that much. As far as stouts go, this is one of the more flavoursome ones I've had. It's far too expensive, but, You find with some of the expensive ones, they go a bit strong and almost unpleasant to drink sometimes. Like the Imperial Stouts can be a bit much. But it's actually quite drinkable, but it's still got big flavour, which it's a good balance. The only downside, like I say, the fact that it's very difficult to get hold of, and the price. But anyway, the beer is just a backdrop, really. I'm here to ramble on about what I've been doing, and I suppose justify the whole Patreon thing, I guess. Oh well, I'm not going to try that hard to justify it. But I will talk about what I've been working on, which, as some of you might know, I can't remember how much I said or where I was at last month. But I think I just started on the Polybius video. So, yeah. So it's been about a month now. And I feel like we've done something this month. I think did we go on holiday? No, maybe that was the month before. I forget. No, it was the end of April. I think we went away at the end of April. Oh yes, that's right, that's our wedding anniversary. So we went away for a week. So I lost a week then. But I don't know, I feel like my wife's birthday came up towards the end of this month. But I don't know, it's flown by. It always does, though. But I've had a solid month to work on this, and I am pleased to report that the script is now finalised for this video. And I can also tell you that the script is quite a long one. The word count is... how many words are there? I'll find out for you. But the estimated runtime is about 62 minutes, which pins it at definitely over an hour. It tells me 7,200 words, which, you know, that's a fair chunk of words, and especially considering, you know, this is not an academic essay. This is a script to be performed out loud, so, you know, there's a certain degree of terseness that's required for that sort of thing. Reading 7,000 odd words out loud it's a substantial body there. So yeah, about an hour, and I can tell you that with the inclusion of some of the stuff, I plan to add on some audio interviews. So every minute of audio interview I add is another minute on top of an hour. So I'd expect this to be possibly my longest video yet. I think the longest video on my channel is the Quake one, which was about an hour and 7 minutes. And I really do think we are going to beat that record. What else have we got? Yeah, 1 hour and 7 for Quake. The next one after that, I think, probably Nuclear Fruit, which is an hour and 8. Oh, Nuclear Fruit is the longest. The Polybius video is probably going to end up being the longest video on my channel. Which is, oh, it's exciting. I know some people like long videos. I don't know, I feel as though some people prefer more regular videos, but, well, you know, we'll see. I'd love to have more short formats, but I don't know, to do a topic justice, I do sort of feel you need to do a longer form. Like, I'm never really happy with a video that's under 10 minutes, unless, I don't know, the happiest I was ever with a short video was the Crash video. That was designed to be under 5 minutes long, and it still ended up being 7 minutes. But that was nice. I liked that video. Good, nice pace to it. Music, colours, graphics. Yeah, it was nice. But yeah, to really sort of go deep on something. The longer, the better, really. But when you start getting into hour-long territory, it's feature length, and just the time required to write the scripts, to assemble all of the visual materials, and to edit it all. It is quite a large amount of work. It's, yeah, I'm not looking forward to editing this one, although it shouldn't be that bad. There's not a huge amount of requirement for novel graphics. Most of it is, I think about 75% of this video is the presentation of evidence and the analysis of said evidence, which is not really original graphics so much as it is taking other people's graphics or gameplay or screenshots of stuff and then, you know, circling stuff and talking about it. It's easy enough to do. The front end, I'm not going to read the script aloud to you because it will take him an hour to do so, but I'll give you a bit of a précis. So the intro, I've had this written for a while actually. I wrote this ages ago. Just, you know, this sort of idea for how I'd introduce the game. There is a video game that doesn't exist. It's a myth, an urban legend, a hoax. It's called Polybius, and you might have heard of it. So that's the initial intro, and then this damn chair, the gas is going on it. Anyway, from the intro, music starts, things get a bit more exciting, and then we have a retelling of the Polybius myth. You know, honest to goodness, no analysis, just straightforward, this is the story. This is going to be accompanied with some nice graphics. I'm actually going to do this in the style of an arcade game intro, like a sort of a tracked mode sort of thing. It's not going to be 1981 era, it's going to be 16-bit, probably, you know, about 1990, that sort of era of graphics. Think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. That had a fantastic intro, wonderful sound, and, you know, it was like a cartoon, but a video game. It was brilliant. But yeah, that sort of level. And we're going to have original soundtrack, which is probably going to be a lot of work, but it's also going to be a lot of fun. And that's, you know, that's half the point of this, isn't it? So yeah, it's a retelling. We set the scene. We talk about this game, this mysterious game, dark cabinet that appears, and then we go on to talk about the side effects. Sickness, amnesia, night terrors, behavioural changes, government conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. End of story. And then straight into analysis. We talk about the evidence, what exists. So we sort of break down each individual element of the myth as presented. So the name, Polybius, what does it mean? Where does it come from? That sort of thing. And then the supposed company, Sinneslotion, which is a German word, almost. What does it mean? And then we talk about the visual elements, the screenshots. There's one canonical screenshot for Polybius, which is, you know, kind of, it's the source of the logo, and it's kind of, it is the only real canonical visual, even though it's completely false. It is bound to the original myth, though. So we do an analysis of the screenshot. We talk about, you know, the logo and how the title screen compares to its contemporaries. We talk about the closest matches, you know, like, you know, what games it might have taken inspiration from. And then we talk about the fonts, the type used, because it's, you know, if you're familiar with stuff like Defender and Robotron, you might recognize the Polybius font. But it actually isn't that game. It's actually a different game. But I will reveal more in the video, of course. And then we talk about some other... There are other fake screenshots that have circulated. We talk about where they came from and why they're likely to be fake. And then, yeah, we move on to the other aspects of the visual evidence, the gameplay, because there are some gameplay videos out there of games that purport to be Polybius. There are two key games. One of them's much, much more dominant than the other. There's actually another one that I was unable to locate. I think it's been lost. Ironically enough, it's a true lost game. There are three variants. There was one that emerged in 2003. There's another one that emerged 2003, 2004, which I don't know. I've not even seen screenshots of it. There's a reference to Slave 2. Apparently Slave 2 was the guy behind it. But that game disappeared. Can't find it. And then there's another one that was distributed by RogueSynapse.com, that's the dominant one. If you type in Polybius gameplay, this is the game you'll see. Actually, I've been in touch with the guy who made this, and I think he's going to be... I don't know. I'm not sure how much he's prepared to give me, but he's happy to talk to me. So I might see if I can get like an audio interview with him. That's still ongoing. He emailed me a couple of days ago, and I need to get back to him. But yeah, there's an analysis of his game. We break open these games as well. We take them into resource editors and extract all of the data from them and analyze it. So it's pretty deep, you know. This is something I wanted to do. I did want to sort of go as deep as possible, without it being, you know, I didn't want to go too facile. I try and keep things interesting. And then there's a bunch of other, like, if you look on the app stores, you'll find Polybius fan remakes. They're all nonsense, of course. And there's a couple of other sort of indie game projects that have borne the Polybius name. But again, you know, they don't claim to be authentic. They're just tributes. And then finally, the most recent Polybius is Jeff Minter's version, which is on the PSVR. I don't have a VR headset yet, but you can just play it on PS4, which is what I've been doing. That's the game I've been playing most of this month, anyway. I tried to get in touch with Minter, but he's been on holiday, so I was hoping to get a soundbite from him. Because I don't know, I think he's a bit of a weirdo, and I think, I don't know, probably get some interesting sound bites from him about Polybius. So that's the gameplay. We move on to the next aspect of evidence, which is physical evidence. So we talk about PCBs that have been discovered, cabinets. There's a lot of videos out there with you know, people finding a cabinet in the wild. And then they all follow a very similar formula. You know, oh my God, what's this? Oh, it's Polybius. Oh man, put a quarter in it. Oh wow, what's this? Wow, it works. Wow, what was that? Always the same thing. And, you know, inevitably they're fake. They're just fan recreations of the cabinet and somebody showing off. Sorry, my chair has gone again. I need to buy a new chair, actually. This one's coming up to a decade old. So, yeah, I should probably just buy a new chair. But I like to get my money's worth out of things. So, yes, all right, admittedly, it does drop unexpectedly sometimes. But it still works as a chair, so... Anyway, so yeah, cabinets, PCBs, physical evidence, and then we move on to the human evidence, the people who claim to be responsible or claim to know something. A couple of major individuals in this one. There's a guy called PRG017, an anonymous programmer from Sega's arcade division, who claims to be a programmer on Polybius. Is he lying through his teeth? Only the video will reveal. And then the big one is a guy called Stephen Roach, who, to his credit, this guy revitalised interest in the myth. In 2006, the myth was kind of coming off the boil a little bit. By this point, it had been cemented into gaming folklore, but it wasn't particularly well known. But Stephen Roach, he kind of rekindled it. And a couple of things happened. In 2006, late 2006, Polybius ended up in an episode of The Simpsons, probably because of Stephen Roach and the interest he kicked up. And also the Rogue Synapse fan interpretation game, the one that is the dominant fan-made game, that was made around this same time as well. I think that game came out, development started late 2006, and the game first emerged 2007. So Stephen Roach, a guy who claimed to be a programmer for Polybius, again, probably, well, definitely full of bovine deposit. He has a claim to sort of rekindling the myth, as full of nonsense as he was. I tried emailing him, actually, and no response. I think whoever was playing Stephen Roach, whatever prankster it was, has moved on to other things. So sadly, we can only just assume that he was full of it. I mean, I'd love to be able to get hold of these people and just, you know, get them to admit that they were lying. But unfortunately, it's difficult. Particularly the guy, I think, behind the myth. He's not playing ball. So it does mean we have not the most satisfactory conclusion, where we kind of arrive at the conclusion that it was definitely probably him, but we don't know for sure because he won't admit it and he's just stonewalling us. So anyway, yeah, that's the evidence section. That's like the first third. And then we move on to the investigatory section, where we attempt to assemble a timeline of events and track the Polybius myth to its origin. So we start off with Wikipedia, because, you know, it's a transparent and reliable source. You can look at Wikipedia, and if it says an article was created in 2005, you can trust it, because Wikipedia was around in 2005 and their site history is transparent. So you follow the Polybius article back to its origin point, and it turns out the first sign of Polybius on Wikipedia was around 2004. So that gives you a start point for the search. You can ignore everything that comes after that and just try and work back, chip away, until you find earlier evidence. And yeah, we assemble kind of a history. So it turns up in a couple of places. Turns up on Snopes in 2003. It turns up on Slashdot, which was that was a pretty big deal back in 2003. Being slash-dotted, I mean, your web server would be aware if it was featured on Slashdot, because for the time it would send a huge amount of traffic. The web was quieter back then, so when, you know, a few thousand people turned up on your website, you knew about it, mostly because things crashed. And then 2003, the big thing was GamePro. In fact, I have it here. Here it is. This, issue 180 of GamePro magazine, which is September 2003. In this, I actually had to buy this. I had to import it from America. It cost me about 10 quid. But, you know, considering that this is quite important to the Polybius story, it was... I couldn't find any scans online of it. But, you know, it doesn't really matter. I've got it now. I've bought it. Let's see. Where's the article? Yeah, here it is. Let's see if I can't see the screen. I'm very sorry. Maybe that will work. Anyway, yeah, they're Polybius. Given an inconclusive rating. But this, I mean, if you read the front of GamePro, what does it say? The world's largest independent multi-platform gaming magazine. Reaches over 3 million gamers a month, apparently. This was a big deal. This was a huge deal for the Myth. Before this, it was mostly just backwater forums and arcade enthusiasts that had heard of Polybius. After this article, it was exposed to hundreds of thousands of people. And this, I think, really cemented Polybius's place in pop culture. So, yeah, actually, I spoke to the author of that article, and I got some pretty tasty scoops with regards to his sources. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's interesting. It's only circumstantial, but it's definitely interesting. So GamePro, that was a linchpin. We talk about that at some length. And we talk about some earlier sources, and then everything points back to this one site, coinop.org. So we do an analysis of the history of the Polybius page on that particular site, and we try and track it back as far as it goes. And it turns out, well, of course, the trail goes rather cold before the year 2000. I mean, the game was supposed to have come out in 1981, but there's absolutely zero evidence for it. And then we go to quite some lengths, actually. This is an account of the lengths that I went to, trying to find... My chair's gone again, sorry. So, yeah, I searched quite a lot of different places, trying to find information on the origin. I shan't go into too much detail, but my search was not exactly fruitful. Scoured Usenet, not just Google Groups, although Google Groups was probably the most useful of all the research, the sources for Usenet. I also downloaded some old archive tapes from Usenet circa 1990. I also did a paid search of a Usenet archive, which didn't turn up much. I was in touch with a few people relevant to Usenet from the time. Nothing at all on Usenet. The Myth was supposed to have been started on Usenet around 1994, but there's no evidence whatsoever, no posts, nothing. And then we move on to the print domain. We talk about books, newspapers, and the enthusiast press, magazines. Pre-2000 magazines. This one's 2003, but I do have a very comprehensive collection of pre-2000 game magazines. All of them OCR'd, all of them fully searchable. The OCR's not 100%, but you'd think, you know, if it was there, you should be able to pick it up. Nothing. Well, not nothing. I did find some results for Polybius, more than you'd expect, but none of them referred to the arcade game. So yeah, that's, you know, the search for pre-2000 evidence, in an attempt to sort of pick up the trail again, really, because everything points to this one site, which originally posted Polybius 2000. And then, you hope that that site didn't make up the story, but, well. And then we talk about suspects, of which there are a couple of suspects. A lot of people actually seem to think it was a guy called Cyber Yogi, but I don't think it was him. In fact, I know it wasn't him. I've spoken to him. He was quite annoyed. Yeah. I think because he's been fingered as the culprit, I think he must get... Whenever somebody investigates Polybius, he gets emailed, and he's a bit annoyed with it. So he sent me this huge document of why it wasn't him. He is, I'll be honest with you, he is a bit of a weirdo, this Cyber Yogi fella, but he is innocent. And I feel for him because, I think some people have just pinned the blame on him, and it's kind of resonated. People repeat this, and it's not true. But I've done my own research, and I present my evidence, and I tell you the story, and I talk about the real suspect, who I still believe he's the one behind it. He hasn't confessed, but so it goes. But what really surprised me is that nobody before me has ever accused this guy or implicated this guy in the Polybius myth, which baffles me because at this point, in my research, this is pretty much the only guy it could be. But I don't know. I suppose I have spent a month or two of my life on this. Maybe not everybody has the same luxury of time. I think most investigations have been quite superficial. Some of them haven't been. I will say there have been a couple of investigations that have impressed me, and I'm standing on the shoulders of those giants, so to speak. One of them was Brian Dunning of Skeptoid.com. He wasn't that in depth with his search, but he had he has a podcast called Skeptoid. He has a level head on his shoulders, and he has a pretty good sense, a good intuition. So I think he was pretty much on the money. He didn't name names, so he didn't go that far. But I think if he were to spend the time, he probably would have tracked it down. And then there was another person called Kat Despira, who she did a fantastic article called Reinvestigating Polybius back in 2011. And I was just impressed with the scope of non-internet research she did. She was looking through corporate records. She lives in Portland, so she was able to go to the supposed arcades and actually talk to people and bring up purchase orders for arcade machines back in the 80s. So she did a lot of sort of hands-on investigative stuff which I haven't been able to do. But again, she didn't arrive at the right conclusion unless I'm severely off base. But I don't know. I don't think she really I think she was rather too focused on the 1981 portion, the sort of the origin, when, well, if you go hunting for something which doesn't exist, you won't find it, which is exactly what happened. So my approach was to start in the contemporary sense and then track that back as far as it will go and see where the path leads. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So we then arrive at the conclusion of who it must have been, and then we go through the rigmarole of trying to contact him, and then the subsequent bamboozle. And then we have a brief discussion of I was under this sort of paranoid delusion that there could have been a hidden code in the Polybius entry, and I still think there might be something to that. And I wasted probably a little while, probably a couple of days, trying to just eke anything out from it, and I couldn't. I still think there's something there, but I've no idea what it is, and I've no idea how to decode it. I feel as though the guy behind all of this is playing a game of some kind. But yeah, there's a small section on the code. I didn't want to go too deep into it just because madness that way lies. But anyway, the potential of a hidden code segues neatly into the third and final section, which is inspirations for the myth and explanations for the formation of the myth. So we talk about some parallel hoaxes, pranks, that sort of thing, things which might have formed influence for Polybius. There's something called the Publius Enigma, which actually is surprisingly similar. And like Polybius was supposed to have started on Usenet in 1994, Publius actually did start on Usenet in 1994. And there's evidence for that. So I talk about that, I talk about the parallels, because this Publius Enigma was supposed to be a hidden code or something within the Pink Floyd's The Division Bell album. But no code, no hidden meaning was ever found. So I sort of, you know, I draw a parallel between my fruitless search and this Polybius thing for this mystery, and it kind of, in a way, serves as justification for leaving it unsolved, because, you know, if this myth has existed for 25 years and Polybius has existed for 17, then what hope is there for me spending a couple of days on it? And then we talk about, you know, just the sort of the cultural ethos, stuff like the X-Files, which was, I think, peak X-Files was around 1998. That was when the feature film came out. It started 93. It sort of gained steam up to 95, 96. Yeah, 97, 98 was probably peak X-Files. So government conspiracies, pretty much, yeah, they were en vogue, definitely. You've got stuff like Men in Black as well, which is a bit camper, but still. And then couple that with the emergence of the internet, this new digital frontier. Of course, it's you know, it's a powder keg, isn't it, for pranksters? And we talk about early pranks, early hoaxes like the Pacific Northwest tree octopus, which I think that might have formed part of Polybius's inspiration as well. And then we talk about Snopes debunking, and that leads on to video game urban myths that were around at that time. And some of the urban myths about video games, actually, you can see elements of those in Polybius. Like, there was a legend that stated if you were able to get a high score on a certain game, on a certain machine, if you attained a high enough score, you would be contacted by government agents, and they would recruit you or something. Which is, of course, it's ridiculous, but it's parallel to the paranoia of Polybius. And also almost identical to the plot of The Last Starfighter, which is a fantastic film, by the way. I also liked, I can recommend you watching, there's a 1983 film called Nightmares, and it's split into 4 separate parts. And the second part is called The Bishop of Battle, and it's basically, it's the Polybius myth. But it's, you know, it's a horror story. It's about this arcade game called The Bishop of Battle, and this kid becomes obsessed with it. It's a very hard game, nobody can beat it. But this, you know, this guy, he becomes addicted, and he plays it again and again and again until he can finally beat the mysterious 13th level. At which point, the game comes to life and absorbs him into it. And then he becomes the Bishop of Battle, waiting for the next person to defeat him. But anyway, the graphics are cool, and it's a wonderful slice of 1980s, so I can recommend it. Then we talk about actual harm that has come from video games. We talk about, you know, just, you know, bad stuff which has happened in arcades. There was one kid he was doing a marathon play session, and he had an upset stomach, and somehow that made the newspapers. Then there was one guy who died of a heart defect whilst playing Berserk. which, you know, obviously that would have caused a few rumours. And then we talk about photosensitive epilepsy, which of course is a very real thing. If you look in any manual, for any game, you'll find a little disclaimer. We talk about a motif of harmful sensation, a recurring theme in fiction. Stuff like The Ring, you know, and Medusa. Secrets and the propagation thereof. Hidden options in the diagnostics menus and how they might have been misinterpreted. And the unreliability of the human brain. And some parallels to other arcade games. We talk about Cube Quest by Simutrek, which was actually a really advanced looking game for 1983. And its gameplay resembles the sort of Polybius one. And then there's an East German arcade game called Polyplay, which we talk about as well. Both of these have parallels. And then we talk about rarities, prototypes, and eventually lost games. Games which are, you know, once existed and now no longer exist. And then we walk, you know, we sort of end up in this position where, well, actually Polybius could have existed. It might just be a lost game, which is a worrying void of uncertainty. But, well, we end on a relatively reassuring note. I don't know if you're familiar with Russell's teapot, but the notion that if you can basically make up anything and say it exists, but the burden of proof for something like that really lies on those telling the story. So, you know, if somebody tells you about a video game called Polybius, you've got to say, well, what's your source on that? And if it turns out that there isn't one, or if it's just from memory, then maybe you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. But, you know, with all of the combinations of this paranoia, these, you know, stuff like that, this melange of arcade mystery, as I put it, a myth like Polybius was almost inevitable. And then the last section. This was never supposed to be a poem, but it ended up being a poem. That's probably a spoiler, but then I've been giving you a précis of the entire script, so there are, you know, yeah, spoilers. But yeah, we end on a poem, which is quite nice. Rhyming couplets. It's a bit like a Dr. Sayers thing. But it's quite it's a poetic ending. And, you know, it'll probably be set to music. So I haven't really done much experiment with verse. There have been a few rhymes in my videos in the past, but never anything like this. It's 16 lines, 8 rhyming couplets. And then we finish on the usual. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. So that's the basic format. There may be some additions. I mean, I might yet be privy to new information, which might change the conclusion. I might yet get that confession. I mean, I'm not banking on it, but it could happen. At which point, I'm going to have to write an insert. I've still got a couple of leads open, and I'm, you know, but I don't know. We'll see. I do also plan to get some audio interviews from people who aren't story critical. Maybe I'm thinking YouTubers, or people of repute in some fashion. I might get them to record like a little soundbite, and just between some of the sections, just to break up the sound of my monotonous voice, I might get them to just say a little piece. I'm going to assemble some talking points and, you know, stuff like, do you think Polybius existed? Get people to sort of riff on that for a little while. I'd like to find some people who genuinely believe it exists, just for balance. But I think most people are probably quite cynical. So yeah, I have a complete script. It's ready to go, and it's a bit of a Leviathan. But yeah, I don't know, I'm looking forward to it. There's plenty of angles of attack on it. Once I've got the script assembled, I can can start working on, well, there's a whole bunch of different sections. If I fancy doing graphics, then there's the intro. If I fancy doing analysis, then, well, there's the bulk of it. And the music as well. Like, actually, I can start work on the music pretty soon. Exciting times. And then if all else fails, I can just email people and get them to provide sound bites and sort of cut those in, intersperse them. I have a plan for the sound bites, actually. I'm going for a very analog vibe. Some of you might have seen the VHS stuff that I've done. I'm planning on incorporating some VHS. Not a filter, an actual VHS machine. This is a tape deck. I actually bought this probably about a month ago now. Probably, well, maybe a bit longer. I bought this. It's a fairly authentic 1980s Technics deck. Just a single thing, nothing too fancy, but it's, you know, it looks the part. It works as well, that's the important thing. And it's got a nice VU meter. Unfortunately, it's digital. I was rather hoping for an analog sort of thing, needles, but it's got a digital one. It's still kind of cool though. And for the interviews, I plan on actually recording the interviews onto tape and then filming the tape as it plays, so you get a close-up shot of the spindles or the VU meter or something like that, or the tape counter. I like tape counters. It's cool anyway. I like it. So there's actually going to be some sections which are going to be filmed. Well, not too much. Not so much as to make them, you know, too much of a bother. Probably about a day, maybe 2 days worth of filming. I've gone so far as to acquire some authentic 80s tape stock as well. These are actually my dad's tapes. Back in the days when he used to tape vinyl onto cassette and listen to it in the car. So these are pretty authentic. There you go. Maxell C90. Black and gold. I don't know when that dates to. Black and gold, probably mid-80s then. Some of them, oh dear. Like this TDK one in grey. This is probably early 80s. Let's see. There's a few different types. Pioneer N160. 30 minutes per side. Yeah, they're quite nice looking tapes. They are definitely of the right era. They don't have the year on them though, unfortunately. Or do they? Have a look. What did this have on it? The Psychomodo. What is that? An album? I don't know. Made in Japan, like all good quality tapes are. It doesn't say what year though. It's annoying. I'm sure there must be a site out there with a catalogue of different tapes. They look the part though. That's the important thing. They're definitely not 90s. I can tell you that much. So yeah, I'm planning on recording, dubbing audio onto these tapes and then dubbing it off again. And then hopefully we'll get a nice sound out of them and we'll have some nice visuals as well. I've got a VCR as well. Unfortunately, my VCR is not authentic 1980s. It's a 1990s VCR. Actually, it might even be. It might be late. Well, it might be early 2000s. Yeah, I have no idea what year these are. Why don't they put the year on tapes? They just don't, do they? Anyway. I shall get mine. This is my VCR. It's in a bag because there's a bunch of other stuff that goes with it. Excuse the noise. Here it is. What is it? It's it's actually pretty filthy. It's Toshiba. It's a V211 UK, which I guess is for the UK market. It was bought from Cash Generator at some point. But it's a pretty bog standard VCR. It fits the bill anyway. I don't have any authentic tape stock, unfortunately. I've got a copy of Space Jam, which is what I'll be using to spool my content onto. I'm not going to go crazy. I don't want to run the whole video through VHS, I should say. But for a couple of sections, I think it would be quite nice just to have a bit of an analog feel to things. So yeah, we're going magnetic tape between the cassette deck and the VCR, and the amount of adapters I've got for this is insane. I've got an RF modulator. Why do I have an RF modulator? Okay, hang on. Wait. Right, so this is okay. What I have here, this takes an HDMI signal and outputs, I think it's composite. And then this is an RF modulator, which takes composite and it modulates it to an RF signal, which then goes to the VCR. And then we've got a SCART output. It's the only output on this thing, actually. We've then got a series of SCART adapters. We go from this, which is a SCART, to HDMI scale converter. It's all Chinese electronics, but miraculously, somehow this works. So what we have is HDMI to HDMI, but it goes through the VCR. What was I smoking when I came up with this? Anyway, it works. I've tested this. It works. And it provides you that sort of... It looks like a VHS filter, but it's not a filter. It's an actual VHS. Brilliant. Utterly brilliant. And it doesn't make any difference. But you'll know it's on Space Jam. And I'll know it's on Space Jam. But you see what you do. I don't know if you knew this, but if you put a bit of tape over the tab, you can actually record on commercial cassettes. So what was Space Jam is no longer Space Jam. It's not Space Jam. This is something else. It's going to be Polybius, or whatever my next project that involves VHS is. So I'm quite excited at all this. We're going analog. It's exciting. I've also got, well, actually my synthesizer is not analog. It's analog modeling, which is not quite the same. But it does have a nice analog sound. But I'm looking forward to doing the soundtrack as well, actually. You can expect something like, think John Carpenter. I like John Carpenter stuff. Or maybe like the original soundtrack to Stranger Things. That sort of brooding synth sound. I really, really like that. So you can expect to hear something kind of similar. Obviously it'll be my own spin on things, but yeah. It's exciting. I'm actually looking forward to this. Writing, boring, but producing stuff, getting your hands dirty with analog cassettes, actually pretty exciting. Hopefully it won't be, it should be alright. I don't know. Production time, I don't know. I'm sitting before a video that's going to be maybe 1 hour and 20. And I can't promise that it's going to be done in a couple of weeks, because it won't be. It's going to take a little longer than that. But you know, if the net result is something feature length, if the net result is something interesting and good, and if it's something which pushes my abilities beyond the current envelope, then it's probably worth it. Because I mean, ultimately, that was the entire idea behind this. Just checking I'm still recording. Yes. You ever get that panic when you're 50 minutes into something and you think, did I hit record or not? That would be a bit of a downer. Anyway, yeah, the reason I sort of decided to do this Polybius project, it was mainly because I wanted to do something deeply analytical. Because, yeah, I think one of the key criticisms, the criticisms that resonate the most are normally, you know, the ones that have the most basis in truth. And one of them is that my content was superficial. And I don't know, some of my stuff, like the brief history of graphics, it was supposed to be superficial. It was always going to be superficial. But, you know, I wanted to prove that I didn't have to be that way. I could do some deep analytical content. I could do original research. I could conduct interviews. I could actually go out there and discover the truth about something which nobody had done before. And I think, you know, I might yet pull this off. Maybe. Like I say, I don't think anybody's arrived at the same conclusion I have. Not with... Nobody's named the person that I believe is responsible. So, I don't know, maybe I'm the first to... I'm hesitant to call it solving the Polybius myth, because it's not quite as satisfactory as that. You know, nobody's going to prison. It's not like at the end of a detective mystery, you know, where, you know, it's all like, oh, the butler did it. Oh, no, it's not like that. It's like, well, the butler probably did it, but, well, it's not a crime, isn't it? You know, so he's not going to go to prison or anything. He's just going to, in fact, he's not even going to admit to it. He's just going to smugly carry on being Mr. Polybius. But, you know, at least I get to finish on a poem. It's a good poem as well. It rhymes. And that's the mark of a good poem, as you know. Imagine that, a poem that doesn't rhyme. I mean, come on, mate. Are you even trying? But no, it rhymes. It definitely rhymes. Most of them are pretty good rhymes. Yeah, well, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I always thought I should be like a slam poetry sort of guy, or like a bit like a rapper, but not cool. That'd be all right. So I might lay down some beats and sort of do a poem over it. It's almost like hip hop, but not really. It's, you know, it's the story, isn't it? The story on the streets, the 8-bit streets. It's quite strong, this beer. Anyway, exciting times. Just, you know, a mountain of work. But I feel as though we're past the halfway mark, and that's important. Just, you know, beyond all the research. I'm looking forward to my next project as well. Maybe that's not a good sign, but it's good that I'm looking forward to something. I'm looking forward to doing the work on this one, and then I'm looking forward to getting off and doing something else. You know, I can do both. Anyway, next up is a more conventional video. Next up is going to be Retro Ahoy, the glorious return thereof. Because I know people like it, and again, it's long-form content, but hopefully I'll be able to take some of what I've learned from Polybius and apply it. Doing original research, I think, oh dear, I think that's something it's definitely worth doing, if you can, you know, or just stuff like scanning your own material and acquiring stuff. which is why I got my Amiga game collection back from my parents, so I can have the original boxes of the Secret of Monkey Island and the sequel, and I can scan them. I can get high quality versions of the artwork, the manuals. I mean, you'd have a tough time finding the manuals online because nobody's really that interested. But you know, if you're going to do a deep dive into a video game, it's nice to have as much material as possible. So I think in future for Retro Ahoy, I'll spare no expense when it comes to acquiring stuff. You know, so at the very least, I want to get a big box copy of the game. I want to get the manual. I want to get the artwork from the manual in the box. And I want to scan it all as high quality as possible and reproduce it in the video. And if there's any sort of, you know, sort of secondary stuff, like art books from the game, for instance, and, you know, I'll get them, I'll scan them. Copyright issues aside, I'll reproduce what I can. Because, you know, that's really the goal of Retro Ahoy. It's to be like this monolithic, definitive video on a video game and its cultural impact. And it's, well, everything about it, really. So yeah, spare no expense. That's the strategy. Don't ask me what's after The Secret of Monkey Island, because at this point I don't know. It's actually up in the air. I'll probably make a decision once I'm done with Polybius. But you know, play it fast and loose. I don't know. What do I fancy doing? The Return of Old format. I'd like to revisit Origins, so that's a likely contender. Other than that, what subjects? I could just do Retro Ahoys, you know. I could do nothing but Retro Ahoys and be quite happy, you know. But it's always worth mixing it up. It's always worth experimenting. I should try and find some more short formats, because invariably, when I try a short video, it ends up longer than I'd like it to be. Oh, actually, one thing that might be coming up soon is a counterpart to A Brief History of Graphics. That's to say, A Brief History of Sound. But I don't think I'm going to do it as a single video. I think I'm going to focus on several aspects and do them as individual videos. So it'll become like an anthology of different aspects of sound. So yeah, at first, I don't know. I could do it in chronological order and start, you know, the earliest sounds. But I don't know. I think I might start with some more interesting aspects. I'd like to talk about music modules, sort of the transition from 8-bit to 16-bit sound, and stuff like Sound Tracker, Pro Tracker, Fast Tracker, Impulse Tracker, the trackers basically. I'll talk about, you know, how they sort of defined a 16-bit sound in a way that MIDI kind of struggled with, and talk about how CD audio replaced it. There's a story there. It would be interesting, and I do have pretty thorough knowledge of the trackers. I mean, yeah, I know a lot about them. So I wouldn't have to. In terms of research, I know 90% of it already. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd still check my facts, and there's still 10% to pick up on, but I think I could definitely do a good video of that. My areas of expertise: Amiga Doom clones, which I've done a video on, and Amiga music, which I've yet to do a video on, but I will do one day. And I think eventually I might aim to produce an anthology of works which form a gestalt of a brief history of music. In fact, I may even edit together a brief history of music from the other videos that I do. Maybe. Who knows? Oh, I see we've hit an hour and I've nearly run out of beer, and I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty tired. It's probably gone 1 o'clock in the morning now. And, well, the baby will be waking up. I say baby, he's no longer a baby. He's definitely a toddler now. I mean, he's at the point where he has a favourite television show. It's the Twirlywoos, in case you were wondering. Oh, it's all he ever wants to watch. He's obsessed with it. And he's going to make me watch it tomorrow morning. He just, every morning. It just never ends. But you know the worst thing? The worst thing is that I've got into it as well. I quite enjoy it now. I get excited when there's a new episode. But I best go to bed, because he is waking up in 7 hours. Whether I like it or not. So, I shall thank you very much for watching. Hopefully, by the next time I see you on the old vloggy, I'll have a new video for you. But given the fact that it's a long one and there's a lot of stuff to do, I don't know. I'm not going to promise. I can promise that there'll be a lot of interesting stuff to share in terms of if you're on the Discord, if you look at the Polybius channel, if you look at the Paste channel, you'll probably see a lot of cool stuff there. I might even post stuff to the dev blog, maybe. As far as finished videos, don't know. There is a bit of a mountain to climb. Yeah, I've got to put together an hour and 20 minutes. And there's a lot of graphics and there's a lot of sound. And there's a lot of analog stuff to put together as well. So, yeah. But, you know, I will have something. I'll probably have at least 45 minutes of video in a month's time. But I'll keep you updated anyway. So thank you very much for watching. And until next time, farewell.